Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Gooey's Dungeon Dive, the podcast where I, Gooey, rank all of the dungeons in the Zelda series. This week, the mood has certainly changed as we're creeping through the Forest Temple. We've grown up, and Ganondorf has taken over. The remaining dungeons in Ocarina of Time are coming in a more familiar form thematically-ish to the palaces and temples of previous games. There's a more personal twist to them though. Instead of freeing various maidens to gain their power, we're actually awakening captured sages. Many of them are characters familiar to us. In the case of the Forest Temple, we must seek out our childhood best friend, Saria. The Forest Temple sits guarded in the Sacred Grove, Saria's secret hiding place, where she once taught us her song. Now, the tone set in the dungeon is also great. I feel like it takes the basic vibe of Skull Woods from A Link to the Past and turns it up 100%. While it has the markings of a typical dungeon/forest setting, like old stone walls with a lot of overgrowth, and enemies that kind of fit that vibe, there's also some dark energy lingering here. There's strange rooms and twisty corridors, and some enemies that are a bit freaky, like the skeletal Stalfos. You've got the wall and floor masters, who are these gross hands that come and try to grab you. And of course, there's the Poes that haunt the dungeon. There's definitely a feeling of some sort of power beyond our understanding at play here. This is all tied together very nicely with the music of the dungeon. I don't even know how to properly describe it. There's like a constant percussive rhythm in the background that sounds like possessed or undead almost, skeletal even. All while there's like a more bouncy melody kind of fading in and out at various parts of the track that almost sound like something from beyond is approaching and fading away and toying with us. One of the best dungeon themes, I think, in all of the series, at least so far. Navigationally, it is too a nice step up for its place in the game. There's the return of a large central room that a lot of the exploration is centered around, and this is also good to kind of help get yourself reoriented if you get a bit lost or confused, I think. We finally see keys return, and they add some minor bits of non-linearity. At least in hunting them down, not so much in using them, though they're not the end-all be-all of navigating this dungeon. Instead, keeping with the theme, I think there are other ways this dungeon can mix up some players and get them lost, all while not being too completely non-linear either. One way is there's the strange outdoor courtyard rooms that are very similar in appearance and are connected by a path in the upper section of the rooms, as well as a strange well that goes below them between the two rooms. I think the similar appearance of the room, as well as the multiple ways they connect and can be entered, this could kind of trip up the mental map of the dungeon in your head. Not to mention the fact that you can access like higher portions of these rooms at later parts of the dungeon. It really makes you question if you're looking for a key or something, like, where do I need to be? Luckily, one of the connecting rooms here provides a map, actually, so right away you can kind of take a look at the whole layout of the dungeon and maybe start to get some ideas. Another more minor room that can get a bit goofy is this weird block pushing room, which is a puzzle-based room that you have to push these blocks around into place, which will make a new path forward. It involves a lot of navigating up and down in this room to get to the other sides of the blocks to push them. It's not exactly my favorite puzzle, but it can be tricky to get into the position you need to be in. But the main thing I wanted to point out about this room was at the top of it, there's one of these weird twisted corridors that I mentioned. And I think both of the twisted corridors in this dungeon can get a player mixed up pretty well. You have to actually shoot these eye switches to twist them, which will open up an alternate path at the end of them. And they can lead to key items, and in also some cases they lead to the path forward. But with this corridor that's at the top of the block pushing room, you actually have to revert it back after getting the items you need to progress forward through the dungeon. Now I think in this section, hunting down for a few of the keys and the boss keys. Might get a little tricky for new players, especially with some of the minor bits of interconnectivity in the design, which I think actually makes the compass that you can get around here very useful in this dungeon, at least for a new player. Of course, I've already mentioned it, but right around here is where you get the dungeon item of the bow, which is solid enough in this dungeon. It's functionally basically the same as the slingshot, but we can't use that as an adult, so it's, the replacement here. It's certainly not a game changer, but it's used pretty well enough in this dungeon, especially along with the hookshot. One very memorable puzzle, I think, with it is having to line up a shot on a moving platform to shoot another one of those eye switches to turn the corridor, but this one is frozen, and you have to shoot an arrow through a torch to melt the ice. So, we get it there as sort of a key to shoot the eye switches, but it's also a key for what the main story thread carried throughout this dungeon is. When we first enter the dungeon, there's that large central room I mentioned, and there are these 4 lit pedestals around an elevator platform. Before we can even approach it, 4 colored Poes appear, and they steal the flames and close off the elevator shaft. So the main objective throughout the dungeon is to actually defeat these Poes and reignite the flames. The first 2 Poe sisters we encounter, Joelle and Beth, they're kind of hiding within these paintings in the closest rooms to where you actually acquire the bow. Now they move from painting to painting, and they laugh as we approach them. Using the bow, we're able to shoot them, and eventually, one by one, get them to come out of the painting and battle us. The third Poe we encounter, Amy, has us actually completing this block-pushing puzzle to form her picture out of the blocks, and then we get another battle with her. Now, kind of the path we're taking on with them eventually does lead back into that central room, and a strange figure sits in the middle of the room, crying out, either to lure someone in or maybe just freak us out more. When approached, this triggers a final battle with Meg, whose fight is noticeably different than the other 3. She splits up into 4 versions of herself, and to defeat her, you have to notice which one moves slightly different, and that's the one who is not a copy that must be shot. Now doing this, it'll light all 4 of the torches, and that gets the elevator going, and we're able to travel into the basement. There's one kind of strange room in there, but after we do that, we're led down another hallway filled with some very unusual paintings, and using the boss key on this immaculate door brings us into another strange room filled with all identical paintings of a dark castle down at the end of a long, spooky road. Attempting to leave this room will cause us to be confronted by Ganondorf? No, not actually. It is the evil spirit from beyond, Phantom Ganon. Being another spirit like the Poe sisters, he also travels in and out of these paintings. He makes multiple copies of himself as well, and it's pretty hard to actually determine which one is him. To fight him, we have to figure out which one is him and let him have it with the bow. After taking enough damage, he actually ditches the horse and floats around in the room, and in a callback to Aghanim from A Link to the Past, Phantom Ganon then invites us to play some tennis with him. He shoots a volley of magical energy at us, and we have to deflect it back using the Master Sword. Of course, the blade that repels evil. This is a pretty awesome conclusion to an awesome little story set throughout the dungeon of these ghosts and spirits and moving in and out of the paintings. And after we defeat him, we get a little bit of smack talk from Ganondorf as he banishes Phantom Ganon to the gap beyond dimensions. We're then reunited with our long-lost pal Saria, and in a kind of a bittersweet moment, she tells us, "It is destiny that you and I can't live in the same world." And of course, she grants us her power in the form of the Forest Medallion. But to raise our spirits, we do get a little bit more-ish of a lighthearted scene where we meet the Deku Sprout. Due to our efforts breaking the Forest Temple curse, he's born. He gives a little bit of information here that we probably already knew, but Link, us, were Hylian, not Kokiri. So whatever, good enough for me, bud. And we're on with our journey to free the sages. And we must continue our journey to rank these dungeons. Now, Ocarina of Time was kind of struggling a bit for me. with the last two. Not really, actually, considering how high the first dungeon of the game is. And it's already surpassed a lot of these A Link to the Past ones. But I really like this dungeon. Like I said, I like this story that carries throughout. I like that, it's a bit more non-linear. It's still got kind of certain set paths, but you're really going to it kind of reminds me of this later half of Key Cavern where you're searching out for the keys, and that's really the puzzle. And of course, just, the vibe and everything it's top tier in that regard. So we'll have a little bit of drama here, right? We'll build it up. It's obviously, for me, it's the best dungeon in Ocarina so far, so it's above the Great Deku Tree. That's without question. I think all those early dungeons kind of set the table, and here we are for a really fun dungeon. Now let's go Swamp Palace. I'm gonna say it is better than the Swamp Palace. I think the water theme is very strong in that one, and the puzzles surrounding that and the switch blocks. And I think that does put up kind of a good fight to some of the puzzles in this dungeon, which I'll say some are not as thrilling to me. But as an overall piece, I do think the Forest Temple is a bit more fun. Key Cavern, like I said, it's got a similar vibe in the second half of searching out the keys to all spend in one place, though, the key gimmick is a little bit more cute in Key Cavern, I'll say. But I'm gonna put it above Key Cavern. I do think overall it's a better complete package, let's say. Now Skull Woods is interesting because I feel like it takes a couple cues from Skull Woods as well. I feel like we're seeing a lot of, the things transferring over from A Link to the Past into this game. And even with this dungeon, I'm kind of seeing the makings of different dungeons within it. Now it kind of has that just with the whole idea of spooky woods or whatever. But this blows that out of the water, I think, in terms of the thematics. I do like that bouncing in and out of the overworld in Skull Woods a little bit better in terms of navigation. But one thing again I do got to give to the Forest Temple is I think for a new player it can actually make the map and compass feel useful, because there is some backtracking, especially if you can miss things in certain rooms. And so I do want to give it props for that. And I do want to put it above Skull Woods, I think. Which what made me think about Skull Woods is that you have kind of the different holes you fall down that just give you like the map and compass, which feel useful. But I feel like it's a bit stronger than that. One thing I gotta bring up again is how it uses stuff like we're seeing, I think, kind of the layout and the way things look in 3D, and like the structure almost becoming a second part of the puzzle or the navigation in itself. Of, it's one thing to remember, like, okay, this room is 2 squares down and 2 to the left, and you always had these type of things like these landmarks, but this is really taking advantage of that, like I said, with like the rooms that are similar looking and twisty corridors and stuff like that. I think it's really unique in that regard, so I can put it above Skull Woods. Palace of Darkness is great. I think it's a great non-linear dungeon. I have felt like I could probably move that down like a space lately. I'm not sure though, but yeah, I just really loved the navigation and gameplay of that. It's very simple. I actually think it's fitting we're comparing Forest Temple to it, because they're kind of both the first dungeon you hit after getting the Master Sword, or after that middle part of the game, I would say. after the world has kind of changed. And I'll definitely put the Forest Temple above that. Though, yeah, that's some classic dungeon exploration right there. Alright, we're getting kind of in the area it's gonna be. Let's see. Catfish's Maw. I mean, that's got a great story running throughout it too, doesn't it? Ooh. Ooh, boy. I do love Catfish's Maw. And Misery Mire. And Turtle Rock. This is really tough for me. Alright, so I've been staring at this list for multiple minutes. I recorded myself going one way and then stopped and stared a while, and now I'm recording myself going the other way. It's very tough. I think this is controversial because I think a lot of people would just throw Forest Temple right to the top, but I'm finally deciding that I'm going to put it above Catfish's Maw. I do like certain things about Catfish's Maw more, which is, I mean, that's kind of how I've been going up doing this. Like, I like how the tone of the Poe battles is a bit more serious, which is kind of cool. I do like the personality on Master Sulfos, but I do actually kind of like the way his battles are integrated into the dungeon a little bit more. And it requires, you know, a bit more of, not a lot more, but you get the one encounter, and then you have to kind of find and figure out what order to do his other encounters and where you need to go, and the way that dungeon opens up is kind of cool. But Forest Temple gets the edge a little bit just in the way it uses some of the 3D structure, you know, and the twisting corridors and stuff like that. It's something that I think it shows what you can kind of do in a game like this. So I'm going to put it there. After that, we're getting into my kind of big epic dungeons that I really like. And, you know, I think this dungeon is still a little bit limited navigationally. Not too much. It's so fitting for where it is in the game. But it, you know, this is a very strong spot for it. Don't get me wrong. So this is a great example of a really, really good dungeon. One of the best in the series. Probably it'll be one of the best in the game. So Ocarina of Time, it's been all over the map, as you can see. Yeah, thanks for everyone for bearing with me there. This was a very, very difficult one to rank. Let me know just how right or wrong I am. Of course, if you like the video, come join the Discord. We've had some nice stuff going on there lately. I look forward to getting into the Fire Temple next week. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you then.